I'm actually very excited to make this video for you guys. This is going to be a history with Nintendo video where I talk about what Nintendo console I grew up with to every single console I played from Nintendo in my lifetime. Now take note, this is not going to be the very first game console I ever played as a kid, and I'm not going to talk about every console I grew up with. This is strictly going to be for Nintendo, so if you love Nintendo or you just want to hear me ramble on about me growing up with Nintendo, then go ahead and listen to this. I feel like also a lot of people have history with video games, but I feel like the older generation stories are just much more cooler because, as you know, if you grew up with video games in the 80s, the 90s especially, the graphics were really bad. But if you grew up like the 360 era, or if you grew up with like current gen consoles, your stories are less cool just because graphics are already really good. So there's not much to talk about and your experiences aren't that good because me personally, I graphics changed so much over my lifetime that there's a lot, you're really blown away at some points in your life. But with other people, you can't really be blown away. Once you played, like, for instance, a PS4, moving on in the future, graphics can get better, but how much better can they get to where you're not really, like, amazed or not blown away? So anyway, let's get talking and start the video. Now, in fact, I'm going to tell you what Nintendo console I grew up with. Now, I'm not going to tell you what decade or what era I'm from or anything like that. You can kind of guess from what I'm actually saying on camera. So if you can figure out the console I said, then you can kind of figure out what decade I was born in and things like that. But actually, believe it or not, my very first Nintendo console was not even a console at all. It was actually a handheld. I did grow up with a handheld from Nintendo. What handheld am I talking about? I'm actually talking about the Game Boy Color. The very first time I ever experienced a Nintendo console was the Game Boy Color. Mind you, the Game Boy, the regular Game Boy was already out on the market and available. But I got, for one of my presents, I got a Game Boy Color. And this is really cool because you've heard me talk about this a lot on some of my videos. You know I am not a Pokemon fan too much anymore, but I can personally say that I grew up with Pokemon. I remember playing Pokemon Red for the very first time in my life, and it was just a magical experience. Seeing Ash, or whatever you call your character, move around the screen and catching these monsters was just flat out fantastic, especially seeing them on the Game Boy Color. You had to still make your imagination up. You didn't have too much to go by, and I was just impressed. I was amazed by the Pokemon series. I flat out loved Pokemon on the Game Boy Color. I played that thing so many times. I also remember as a kid too, if you don't know, Game Boy Color, even to the Game Boy Advance, those systems used AA batteries. Yes, they used batteries. So I remember bugging my parents like every week, get batteries. I need batteries. Batteries were a big concern up until the Game Boy Advance SP. So batteries were a real issue. You don't know the struggle until you have used batteries, especially if you're a little kid, that's all you have, and you're playing that nonstop for hours and hours on end. Batteries become an issue. Also, with the older generation, I remember too, I used to try to play that thing in bed, but I couldn't play that thing in bed because, as you know, also the older consoles, handhelds, did not have any backlight at all. So it sucked that you couldn't play at night. You had to go next to your bed and turn on a lamp or turn on your light in your bedroom and try to get it that way. And then sometimes also you would get a really bad glare on the system, especially if you're playing outside in the sun, or even some lights would give it really bad wonky glare. And especially in my generation, especially when I grew up, I was a kid when I played the Game Boy Color. If you damaged that, especially the screen, if it got scratched up, sometimes it was so hard to see the screen when it got scratched, it wasn't even usable really anymore. I remember recently going around, I seen some Game Boy Colors, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy, regular Game Boy. If it got scratched too much, it was basically just you either change the front panel or it's just unusable. I don't think that ever happened to mine, but that was definitely a very thing that was not fun to experience. You do not want to get a lot of scratches on your Game Boy Color screen, Game Boy Advance, or Game Boy screen. Another game I got as a kid, which I actually played a lot of, believe it or not, because when you're a kid, you don't get much, you don't really know what's going on, and you really appreciate things that you get more when you're a kid. And one game I got real early besides Pokemon was a Mario Golf, and I played the heck out of Mario Golf. I love Mario Golf. It was the one on the Game Boy Color, and it was flat out fantastic. I love that game. That was actually the game that actually had an RPG element to the golf. It wasn't just golfing. One thing I love about that game was you can create your own character, you had stats, and it was, the music in that game was just flat out fantastic. I remember also in the summer, one summer, I ended up getting a Pokemon Puzzle League. If you never played Pokemon Puzzle League, woo, those were some fun times. Am I saying it's better than Pokemon, or did I enjoy it more than Pokemon? No. My experiences with Pokemon growing up are still better with the original, like the main series games. Pokemon Red was it. But I remember playing Pokemon Puzzle Challenge or Pokemon Puzzle League, and that game was flat out fantastic. I love the music in that game. I love that game. And it's funny now today, looking back on my memories of that game, I'm not really a puzzle type of person anymore. So it's funny, in the past, you look at my past, I played that game to death. But to be fair, when you're a kid, you don't really know what you really like, what you hate, what you dislike. You're still trying to become a person as a whole. So I didn't know. I just played it, and I love that game as well. Now, there's some other Game Boy Color games I probably got, but to be honest, I can't remember what I got on the Game Boy Color, just because those are once you start getting older too, your memories become less and less, not important, but it becomes more foggier, so I can't remember what else I got on the Game Boy Advance. But those, not Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, those were it. Pokemon Red, and then Pokemon Puzzle League. I did actually get Pokemon Yellow and Pokemon Blue, but it's pretty much the same thing. And once you experience Pokemon for the first time, it's hard to like be amazed again. So those games, I just played them, but I wasn't like blown away or anything like that. I do remember playing them, and I love those games as well. So that's pretty much where I started. I started with the Game Boy Color. I didn't have the ones that were I think I had a blue one, and I did not have one that was see-through. The big thing back then was see-through consoles. Everybody wanted it futuristic. It looked futuristic. It was awesome and things like that. I remember too, as a kid too, I remember using the Game Boy Color Link, like the cable that you can actually trade Pokemon with and play multiplayer through Game Boy Colors. I used that a lot, especially with like my siblings. I loved that thing, and it was awesome, especially with my friends as well. I used that, and that's pretty much one way you had to get certain Pokemon through trade. You were not able to get them through trade, so I did experience that as well. The next console I got from Nintendo, I can't remember which order they're in, because I can't remember when they released, but I think the next one, I could be wrong, but I had them both pretty much at release when I was a kid. So I don't know which one they came with, but I'm going to go with next. I'm going to go with the GameCube. I got the GameCube right around release. I remember seeing footage somewhere. I think, yeah, the internet was already available back then. It wasn't good internet and it wasn't fast, but I remember seeing something on the internet about the GameCube, and I immediately told my parents, we need to get this GameCube. So I got the GameCube, and I had fun. I wouldn't say I was blown away like Pokemon or the Game Boy Color, but I loved my time with the GameCube. We all know the GameCube is one system that is very underrated with most gamers. We know it sold bad. Nobody really cared about it. It used those tiny discs, but the GameCube was where it was at for me. I liked it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite system or even my favorite Nintendo system, but I love the GameCube. Two games that got me hooked on the GameCube for hours and hours and hours and hours was definitely Super Smash Brothers and another game, Mario Kart Double Dash. Those were actually both of my very first times playing the Smash Brothers series and Mario Kart. Yes, the N64 was already around, but I never grew up with the N64. Would I wish I grew up with the N64? Yes, I would have wished I would have grown up with the N64. But you know, when you're a kid, you can't choose what you have, and your parents usually choose for you, and you're pretty much stuck with whatever your parents give you. So that's why I never grew up with the N64, and that's why I never actually mentioned the N64. That's why you're not hearing me talk about anything about the N64, but GameCube was where it's at. I actually don't think I got too many games for the GameCube, believe it or not. It was pretty much Smash and Mario Kart for it. Double Dash was definitely very, very fun. So many memories, especially even more with Super Smash Brothers. I remember going to my friend's house every Friday playing Smash Brothers. So many memories. I remember one memory. It was back about 2006, and you know, Smash Brothers Brawl was not relevant until the Wii. And I remember my friend was I would say he's like a million times better at Smash Brothers. But for some reason, I play this game pretty much competitively. Even back in those days, I took that game serious because my friends took it serious. And I remember beating him in a Smash Brothers not a tournament, but a Smash Brothers match. And then what he does, he immediately turns off the system before the win screen comes on. And that flat out boiled me. It got me so mad. He wouldn't accept that I defeated him. I don't think I'd ever be able to beat him today because he still plays Smash Brothers and he's still good at the series. He still mains Melee as his main Smash Brothers game, but I just got the feeling of him beating me before. And I remember also as a kid, I was watching this one kid who was in the army, and I remember that he was like unstoppable in the game, and it made me so happy. I was excited to watch this kid. I think he went to tournaments and everything like that, but he was flat out good at the game. He was like a monster. I think we all know. I think he pretty much made Fox or Falco, because if you never played Melee before, you will know that the two main characters people play are either Falco or Fox, primarily Fox, and he was ham at the game. I'm not no slouch at Melee, but I got pretty good back in my day. And I did get some other games. I remember another game, I think True Crime was definitely a game, if I do believe it was like pretty much a Grand Theft Auto clone for the GameCube, because as you know, Nintendo never really got Grand Theft Auto games in any form or shape. Some of the handhelds did, but the consoles, no. We didn't get a main Grand Theft Auto game because Nintendo didn't want to put too many violent games on their current gen consoles, so that's why. But I played True Crime and I loved it. And also, I have memories too of certain stores back in the day where I would actually go out and get my video game. I remember this store called Game Exchange. I think that it's a chain in America. It's not a big chain, but they're primarily for the retro crowd. They do sell new games, but that's not what they're known for. And I remember going to this chain called Game Exchange, and that's where I looked at most of my games. It's not around in my city anymore. It went completely broke, but I loved that store before. I just loved it. And the good thing about that store is they would always resurface games anytime the games like had a ring around them or they got scratched. They would resurface them for a couple bucks. I just love going in there and seeing what I could find. One thing I loved about Game Exchange was I personally went in there for. I went in there to actually play their consoles because they had pretty much every single console laid out from like. If the previous console, for instance, was the GameCube, then all the previous consoles would be there from Nintendo. And I would go there just to play the systems. I remember that. Sometimes I would go there just to meet up with people and try to play with them and whatnot. But I do remember they had them, at least at my Game Exchange. I don't know if that's true with every Game Exchange, but in my Game Exchange, that was definitely true. And I loved going there for that alone. And then the next console from Nintendo I got was another handheld. I did get the Game Boy Advance. I got both iterations. I got the Game Boy Advance, and I also got the Game Boy Advance SP. And let me tell you, my memories with the Game Boy Advance are some of my best memories in my life, period. I would say even over the first time I turned on Pokemon Red, believe it or not. I flat out love the Game Boy Advance. Is it my favorite handheld of all time? I don't know. I would really have to sit down and think about my favorite handhelds, but that's definitely probably my top 3 favorite handhelds of all time. Also, when you make a list like that, it's kind of like, well, nostalgia is going to beat anything else. Even if the games were crappy, even if the system didn't sell well, nothing good on it. If you've had good memories with something, sometimes you put that there and be like, that system sucks, and you can admit it sucks, but nostalgia and just your memories of this system will make you put it in your list higher than other systems, even if they have better games. Now, I had a lot of Game Boy Advance games. Let me tell you, I've had a lot. I had the staples, of course. Probably the most Pokemon game I've ever put the most time into was Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. And Pokemon Ruby, I probably put at least like 500-600 hours into it. I remember as a kid, I would stay up until like 5 in the morning playing Pokemon Ruby Ruby and Sapphire. Specifically, I got the Pokemon Ruby card, and I played so much of that, and I got almost 99% of Pokemon. That is the one I completed almost entirely, and I remember that was the one that actually had those secret bases in it and everything like that. I love that. Oh, speaking of Pokemon, I forgot I did get Pokemon Silver and Gold, and I had memories of those as well. I think I got it around the same time I got Pokemon Puzzle League or Pokemon Challenge League, but I did get that game as well. There's other games, but sometimes I just can't remember them. I can remember the big titles, of course. Pokemon Ruby was definitely my life back in the day. I would also go over to my friend's house and we would just sit down and play it for hours and hours and hours. And then that also tied in with the GameCube because Pokemon Coliseum was a thing, and Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire could work with Pokemon Coliseum on GameCube if you had the link cable with your Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP. You can plug it into your Game Boy, your GameCube, and you can do stuff with it, which was awesome. That's also how I got Jirachi in the game. If you know Jirachi, this little puffy thing, actually that's how I got it. One game I played so much as a kid, I love this game as well. It was one of the Dragon Ball Z games. I think it was like Dragon Ball Z Goku's Legacy. Yes, Dragon Ball Z Goku's Legacy. I love that game. The boss battles and the fighting in the game was fluid. It was not. I love that game. I would actually want to get a copy of Dragon Ball Z Goku's Legacy. I don't know which one it was because I think they made Legacy 1 and Legacy 2, but I love that series. That series was awesome. Another thing, I remember when I got Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire. Yes, they did make a Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire pinball game. I remember I was going out of the country. If you don't know, I've actually been out of the country. Not going to say where I've been in the world, but I've been out of the country. And I remember when I got Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire, I took it out of the country. And on a plane flight, for some reason, I lost the game and I was sad. I actually loved Pokemon Pinball, whether you believe it or not. It was just kind of weird. I love that game. Would I get the game today? I don't know if I would get the game today, but I absolutely love Pokemon Pinball. I was just so mad inside when I lost Pokemon Pinball. Same thing goes for my Game Boy Advance SP specifically. I remember one day I couldn't find my Game Boy Advance SP, and I looked outside and I saw my Game Boy Advance SP, but then I had my jaw down. I was like, are you kidding me? It's outside. Because I remember that day it was raining. When I checked it, it had water damage, and I was frustrated. But what do you expect as a kid? Most kids aren't going to take care of their stuff. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to be roughhousing your stuff. And yes, that's why also I wish a lot of this stuff would have came out when I was a little bit older, just so I can preserve this stuff, take care of it, and things like that. But a lot of the stuff as a kid I don't have anymore. Some of the stuff I would actually like to still own and keep. I'm trying to think of some other Game Boy Advance games I own. Oh yes, I own the remake of Donkey Kong Country, and I love that game. I think that actually might have been one game, actually. It was too hard for me as a kid, and I think that's how I got Pokemon Ruby, actually. I tried to trade it back into Walmart for Pokemon Ruby, and I think they said unopened games weren't allowed to be traded in, so I couldn't trade that into the store. Also, just thinking of other Game Boy Advance games or Game Boy Color games, I remember I did get a Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 game on one of the handhelds. I can't remember which one. I had fun with it, but I wouldn't say it was amazing. But I did get a Tony Hawk's game. One game I do remember as a kid very, very, very much was Jackie Chan Adventure. It's a beat-em-up side-scroller game, and that thing is actually awesome. I love that game, and I never beat it as a kid because that game was way, way, way too hard for me to beat Jackie Chan's Adventure, and I never ended up beating that game. That's why also I would love to get some of these games I never beat as a kid and try to beat them too. I also had I don't remember what system, I think it was Game Boy Advance, but I did end up getting a Lego Bionicle game, some kind of Lego Bionicle game, and I played a lot of that, but that game didn't interest me too much at all as well. So, yeah, also on the Game Boy Advance SP or Game Boy Advance, you'll know that those systems are backwards compatible. And I remember when the Game Boy Advances were backwards compatible, I did end up getting a Game Shark, and I did have a Game Shark. Especially, let me talk about Pokemon Red, going back to Pokemon Red. I did have a Game Shark. And I remember the missing gnomes and the 99 rare candies and Mewtwo and everything. I remember that vividly because as a kid, I would love to tinker around with a lot of my stuff. And Pokemon Red was a game I tinkered around with so much. I think one time I accidentally broke the game, believe it or not. Because if you try to do too much hacking with the game or too much cheating, it'll end up breaking the game. And I actually had it, I think, to where I wouldn't even load one time because I like used that exclusively so much when I actually had that. Also with the Pokemon series, just talking about Nintendo and things like that, I did grow up with Pokemon cards, yes. Did I actually play the game as a kid? Nope. I only collected the cards and I was a fanatic of the game, but I did not play the card game for that, so I don't really have any memories of me playing the actual card game. But collecting the cards, I was a big fanatic. And I would say also, back in my time, most kids in my school, middle school, and even elementary were a big fanatic of Pokemon. Especially Pokemon. You'd hear every single kid talking about Pokemon, playing Pokemon, and everything like that. It was a big deal. You think Pokemon is a big deal now? It was a very big deal back during my day. Flat out bigger deal. I would say it's a bigger deal than the actual system or Nintendo itself. That's how big Pokemon was back in my day. But to be fair, it just did come out to the States, so everyone was amazed by it. So that also to take in consideration. It was fresh, it was new. We've never seen a game like that at all. Now, let's move on to some other systems. Oh yeah, also, by the way, because I have a lot to talk about. Also, by the way, I did actually, for my Game Boy Advance and my Game Boy Color, I did get the Snake Light. If you don't know what the Snake Light is, it's an accessory that lets you use your system without having a physical light around. Because I told you, they don't have backlights, so you have to use something. So once I got the Snake Light, it was on from then on. But it did drain quite a significant amount of battery. One thing about the Snake Light is, I never actually had my Snake Light go like the ball burn out. I pretty much used it up until the day I lost my Snake Light. I remember one time too as a kid, my parents said you're not allowed to play Game Boy. What I did was, I remember I was at the drive-in movie theater, and I took my Game Boy anyway, and I was in the back seat playing my Game Boy with a little Snake Light, and I absolutely loved doing that. It was just awesome. So many memories taking that around, especially when the Snake Light came out. I also had that one accessory that magnified your Game Boy Advance. It's like a little magnifier that goes over the screen. It's kind of actually a chunky accessory, but I had that accessory as well. Was it that useful? I would say no. It was kind of just a little stupid gimmick. I'm going to be honest. It was a stupid gimmick. But the Snake Light, no, it wasn't a gimmick. Now, I'm not sure if it worked on the Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Color. I think one Snake Light worked on both systems, but I can't remember all together. Now, let's move on to the next system. I pretty much owned every system from the Game Boy Color up to the Switch right now. But, I remember when the Wii came out. Now, I did not like the Wii too much, but I did jump on the bandwagon. Looking at sales figures, you can see that whether you're a gamer or whether you're a casual fan, I would say majority or a lot of people in the world did jump on the Wii bandwagon. And I was not jumping on bandwagon because obviously you can tell from what I'm talking. I'm a big Nintendo fan, but I definitely got the Wii. And what I do, I played all the motion control games like most people did. I played the Wii Sports and everything like that. And then I got Mario Kart, and then I got Super Smash Brothers, and some other games. But the Wii was definitely a system that I didn't care really too much about, so I don't have too many memories about the Wii. One thing I did use the Wii for, which maybe a lot of people didn't use them. I said before, on a lot of my consoles, I don't actually use like Netflix, the internet browser, and any of the built-on apps. I mainly use them for gaming. But on the Wii, I actually used the channels they had. They had like a news channel, a weather channel, and things like that. I actually was big into those at the time. I do remember one Christmas though, I did get Excite Truck, and I loved Excite Truck. And also, I did get Dance Dance Revolution. Well, that was really my sister's idea, just due to the fact that that she loved rhythm games. I loved rhythm games, but I wasn't too big into them. We also did get Guitar Hero 3 on the Wii, and I never really liked the fact that you had to put the Wiimote into the guitar for the Wii. I wish it was like the PS2, PS3, Xbox, where you just strum the guitar, you can use it as a controller. But why on the Wii did you have to put the Wiimote into the guitar? Some people will say that's a cool aspect of Guitar Hero on the Wii because you're using the controller inside of the guitar, but I wasn't a fan of that. But yeah, my memories of Guitar Hero were definitely really cool because Guitar Hero 3 was a flat out amazing game. It might be my favorite Guitar Hero of all time, actually. The songs are very, very hard in that game, and they're flat out fantastic. So if you're looking for a Guitar Hero game to play, and you still love Guitar Hero 3, but most likely, if you're a Guitar Hero fan, you've already played 3, and you probably know it's one of the best Guitar Heroes possibly ever made. I would even say it's better than Guitar Hero 2, just because of the difficulty. There's more songs, and it's more accessible. It's on newer hardware and things like that. Now we move up to the more current gen consoles as well. Oh yeah, I did get a DS too. I keep forgetting they have handheld consoles, and they also have regular consoles. So handheld and regular consoles. I did get a DS, and my memories of the DS were awesome. I would say they're comparable to pretty much everything else. My very first game on the DS, because I did get it at launch, was Asphalt. And let me tell you, I loved Asphalt on the DS. I know it doesn't hold a candle to every other racing game. There's plenty of better racing games than that. The reason I got Asphalt, because my friend was playing Asphalt when he got his DS. We both got DSs at the same time, and I didn't get a game when I got my DS. I was actually thinking about what games to get, because I remember Super Mario 64, Asphalt racing game, and then Sims Herbs was there as well. And I remember he was playing Asphalt, and I was blown away. Yes, I know it's crazy to say I was blown away, because Asphalt looks like a pile of poop compared to today's standards, or even compared to that time period. You can probably get stuff better than Asphalt. But let me tell you, I loved Asphalt, and I played the bejesus out of Asphalt. Same thing goes with the Pokemon playing in the back of the car when my parents told me not to. I would stay up hours and hours and hours playing Asphalt before school. And I remember my parents, I was shaking. I was like, if my parents see me playing Asphalt before school, they're going to kick my butt. And I got away with it so many times. I loved Asphalt. Speaking of my very first DS, I don't own my very first DS because some kid, there's people out there that are generally dishonest, and you just got a lot of scummy people in this life that never explain. But somebody at school stole my original DS. I would have had my DS forever, pretty much. Even if it wasn't working, I would have had it forever. It was working when someone stole it, but somebody stole it. I remember exactly what happened. I had to go to the bathroom one time at school, and then for some reason, when you're a kid, sometimes you don't make the smartest decisions, and I put it in a backpack, and when I came back, they didn't care nothing about the backpack, because most of my stuff in my backpack was not expensive stuff. They're mostly books, paper, pencils, just your generic school stuff. And inside my backpack was, guess what? A Game Boy DS, or a DS, Nintendo DS, and some kid hijacked me. That's one thing, I'm never doing it again. I'm being more cautious nowadays. But that just sucks. I don't have my original DS. Sure, you can buy consoles easily and they go down in price, but just having the one that you grew up with means a lot. And you know what I'm talking about. If you've had, say, a Game Boy Color your parents give you, and your parents are deceased now, you understand where I'm coming from. They're just good mementos to keep for a lifetime, whether they're working or not working. But the DS, I've had a lot of memories with. I got Asphalt, and then I got Super Mario 64 DS, the remake, and I honestly did not know that was a remake. I thought that was a game made specifically for the Nintendo DS, and I absolutely loved that game. I remember the coolest part about that game was the fact that you could actually play mini games. They added mini games to that, and let me tell you, the mini games on that game were awesome. I loved the mini games on that. I remember there was a card mini game with Wario. There was also a bomb one where you had to fling bombs at little parachutes coming down. And then you also had one where you had to categorize bombs, ticking bombs and no ticking bombs. And that game was really, really frustrating and chaotic. I absolutely loved that. Oh, I also remember one game on that Super Mario 64 DS remake. I remember that there was a game where it would show these enemies on the screen, but it would be like for a second it would be black, and then you had to try to guess where the different things were. I think that was on the harder levels actually, but they would show you like a group of different Mario characters' faces, and you had to really quick point to which one they were showing you, and that game got very, very hard. And outside of that, the actual main game for me was very awesome. I can say that I did not grow up with the original Super Mario 64, but I did grow up with Super Mario DS, so you can kind of say I did grow up with Super Mario 64 technically, but technically not, so no, I'm not really claiming it, but it's still cool I did play that. I also did end up getting the launch title as well, one of the launch titles, our early DS game, which was Urbz Sims in the City. I remember playing that game, and for a factor, my sister is big into the Sims franchise. I am not too big into it, but I do love it from time to time, and my sister beat the Sims Urbz. Oh yes, I also did play the Sims Bustin' Out on the Game Boy Advance, and then I got the Urbz. And I don't never beat any of them, but I do love the ones on handheld. I think they're flat out fantastic. I'm trying to think of some other games on DS that I might have played, but there's a lot, but I can't remember. I was never a big Pokemon fan when the time the DS came out. I pretty much was done with Pokemon up until Pokemon X and Y came out. Now let's move on to the rest of them. We know the 3DS and the Wii U. I have had so many memories with the Wii U. Now the Wii U is not even old at all, so I can't really say that there's too many memories, just due to the fact that it's only like 3 or 4 or 5 years old, so I still remember everything about it. It's just like, I just picture it as a console I got yesterday because I got it. But what I will say, even though a lot of people do bash the Nintendo Wii U, I actually like the Wii U more than the Wii. I know that sounds crazy, but for me, I just cannot, one thing I cannot handle with the Wii, I just can't handle the graphics. You would think that I do love retro games and I love playing them to death, but I just cannot handle playing the Wii compared to the Wii U. Once Nintendo realized HD was a thing, there was no going back. Actually, when the Wii was a thing, I was already playing 360 and PS3, and I just couldn't go back to the Wii for the most part. I did play staples, like I said, Mario Kart and Smash, but for the most part, I did not touch my Wii, because comparing them to the other consoles, I was flat out blown away. I was flat out blown away that 360 and PS3 just looked so much better than the Wii, and taking consideration I was a kid, so of course things are going to look better, and as a kid you don't really know much, and your mind is still developing, so I was flat out blown away by those consoles, not necessarily the Wii, and I care like 2 cents about the Wii, honestly. Same thing with the 3DS and Switch. They're new consoles. I've had memories. I like the 3DS, but I don't really say I hold 2 memories with them. I don't think a lot of people have memories with them, unless of course you're still a kid right now and your first console ever was a 3DS. Then you might have memories with it and stuff like that. But yeah, so I pretty much started with the Game Boy Color up to the Switch, and that's where I am with Nintendo console. I am a long-time Nintendo fan, and I will always be a Nintendo fan. Whether they're around tomorrow or whether they're currently a dead company, a broke company that filed bankruptcy, I will always love Nintendo no matter what. Even though a lot of people give Nintendo crap, their games are kiddie, their games are not what you want, they're not hardcore games, I love Nintendo. Don't forget to stick around because I will be making a video about all the consoles I grew up with and my history with gaming as a whole. Anyway guys, peace out. I'll see you guys later in my next video. I'm out guys.